rocking in this decade too, and he's just about to release, get this, album number 104.
Bonkers. Please welcome the truly timeless Sir Cliff Richard.
Sir Cliff, good to see you. I'm being told to sit back. From our audience members here, I'm being told to sit back so they can get a better view of you.
Yeah.
So I'll just get my
you
Sir Cliff, just saying there, album number 104. Is that some kind of record?
Believe, but you know, they released albums after we'd been singing for about a year or two. Suddenly there was a Cliff's silver discs, Cliff's gold discs,
right.
Cliff's rubbish discs.
So you didn't have to do much work for some of them?
But there are probably about 50 actual new studio albums that they've done, and this is the latest.
Mightily
unbelievable. It makes you feel very unproductive, doesn't it?
It makes me feel old.
Let's talk about a couple of those decades. So, 1950s, your very first single, Move It.
Yes.
I mean, it hit the charts the 12th of September, 1958. What do you remember about that, if anything?
Well, it's not easy to forget because it's the beginning of my life, really, and the beginning of my career. And I remember definitely that the song was written on the 715 Green Line bus from Cheshunt to Oxford Circus. And when we got there, we went to an audition, and that's what we played. Ian Samwell had only written half the song, but in the end, we just sang the half the song, put in a guitar solo, and sang it again. And 38 years later, I got the second verse.
That's commitment.
We'll move into the 70s because you were the first Western pop star to perform in the USSR.
How did that come
about?
There'd been a number of artists invited there,
right.
But they were usually not internationally known.
Right.
So as far as I was told that I was the first internationally known artist, you know, worldwide, to be invited there. And I think it's because I was a safe bet. Okay. They were very, very careful about the kind of stuff that was going on in the 60s, and they didn't like the freedom of it all. And so as a sort of fairly regular pop rock star, I got invited, and it was a great time to go.
Memorable?
It was memorable, but strange, because most of the audiences were filled with people with bow ties on,
nice.
And the actual fans couldn't always get into the theatres. There was a protocol of inviting all the top-notch dogs,
right.
And so, but, I mean, we couldn't do anything about that. But,
well, we told our audience to wear black tie. They didn't listen to us. Later on, we will be coming bang up to date and talking about Sir Cliff's brand new album, Rise Up.
But first, to a new survey.
That were all around wrapped, and I just put someone's name on it, thinking that's who it was. And when they opened it up, it said, "To Cliff with love." Oh. I don't remember what it was.
By
I didn't mean it.
That's a good one.
Well, listen, we've been talking about album number 104. It's called Rise Up, so let's have a little listen. Here we go.
Oh, rise up. They're never gonna break me down. Rise up. They're never gonna take me down. Rise up. You know I'm gonna rise up feeling stronger. Rise up. Even when the night is long. Rise up. The light of love was burning strong. Rise up. You know I'm gonna rise up even stronger.
So, Cliff, you listen to the words, it's not hard to realise that this is a response to the last 4 years of your life. Has this been quite cathartic to be doing?
The guy that wrote it, he collaborated with Graham Lyle, who used to be Gallagher and Live some years back, and his name is Terry Britton. And when I was approached by the record company to do an album of brand new songs, they said we're going to ask all the contemporary writers to write something. We got about 400 songs. And I said, well, can I ask some of my old friends that wrote for me?
Yeah.
And sure enough, Terry and Graham Lyle wrote that song, and they wrote it for the situation I had come out of.
Okay. Yeah.
So it made it really fantastic to get my tonsils around and get my teeth into a song that really made me feel good.
And how do you feel when you sing that song?
Oh, it's fantastic. I feel slightly rebellious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've never really been a rebel, but it makes you feel, when you say, you're never going to break me down, you're never going to take me down, you know I'm going to come up stronger. There's a toughness about it, which I feel now that the becoming stronger is actually true. I do feel stronger.
Do you?
Okay.
So in spite of all the rubbish, I do feel better for it
afterwards.
afterwards.
The other side better. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. There's been a 14-year gap between you having done an album of original material. Why so long?
Well, the thing is, it was the fact that the business has changed. radio stations started to have policies of not playing certain things, not playing certain aged people.
Right.
And unfortunately, I fitted into that category. And so in the end, even I remember reading Elton was saying, what's the point of recording new albums? No one's going to hear them.
Right.
And so I thought, why waste the money of record companies? Just do songs that people know. So I did a duets album. I did an album called the Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook.
Okay.
And then I did the last one before this one was Fabulous Rock and Roll. All songs that people knew. So once they see what it is, they can decide to buy it or not.
Okay. So they love Cliff. They love those songs.
It didn't need necessarily airplay, but airplay was vital. And when I think about rock and roll and radio, hand in glove.
Yeah.
You made records for the glove to be fitted, and it's been taken away from a lot of people, actually.
And so, Cliff, we've heard you talk through the years about the support from the fans and always wanting to give back to them too, and you're still performing live. You know, we're going to have a little look at you up on stage, because your energy really is quite something.
That became my biggest hit single ever. It actually made it in America, got to #4. Devil Woman had made the American charts as well, but We Don't Talk Anymore somehow outsold it. Wow. Although if a Martian was to come down now and I had to show him what I did in my life, I would play Devil Woman.
You play Devil Woman?
Would you?
Okay.
Because it's a sort of classic thing. We Don't Talk Anymore was just perfect pop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And 60 years on, do you still get nervous ever? Going on stage?
I do get nervous. And this year I made a big boo-boo at Killarney when I was introducing the first concert we did. And each decade I sang songs by other people who had had successes in that decade. And I sang a song called Bright Eyes. And I said that this song had been sung by Art Fart Gunkel.
Art Fart Gunkel. I mean, it sounds like something I'd do.
Yeah.
And I did say to them, I did tell a bit of a fib, though. I said, it's all right, though, because I called Art. And I told him what had happened. He said, oh, don't worry, that was my name, I changed it.
Brilliant. Well, Sir Riff Clichard's new album is out tomorrow. And tickets for next year's tour dates are all 60 years on in showbiz. Thinking right back to the very beginning, do you remember that moment where you thought, I'm famous? People are following me.
Do you know, I didn't think I was famous, but the first time I ever had girls screaming at me was I was still an amateur, and we used to do a talent competition in the Gaumont Shepherd's Bush, which was a cinema. And I had said, we'll come and close the show. We want to be your top of the bill, and it's for free. And if you say the word free, you get anything. Anyway, so I went there, and girls screamed at me. In the end, I had to run down in the corner of the thing. There used to be a public loo. I ran in there and locked myself in the gents' toilet for a while until they all dispersed.
Okay.
And then I thought,
some footage of you here. Let's have a look. I think you're going up an aeroplane or something here. But yeah.
It's like mania, really.
But that wasn't the toilet.
They what?
That wasn't the show.
No, that was an aeroplane, don't worry.
It's a plane, not a toilet.
I'm sure they had a loo on board at some point. But anyway, we're now going to get the perspective from the other side of things now, because we are about to meet a fan who's been there, Sir Cliff, since the very beginning. By the way, we're going to put a favourite song on now if we can. Oh, there we are.
She went to your first Cliff gig that she went to was in 1959, aged 13. What were her parents thinking? Ever since, she has been on the quest for an autograph.
Yes.
Never got one.
Now, some of our audience are expecting to ask questions, so we've put a little microphone on it. But let's say hello to Doreen, because Doreen doesn't know this is happening. Doreen, let me take you by the hand, because we're going to take you over to go and meet Sir Cliff. Yes, we are. Come on over. Come on over. Now, don't be shy, because you've been building up for this for about 60 years, so here we are. There you are. Sir Cliff Doreen.
How nice to see you.
That's absolutely wonderful.
You came in 1959?
Yes.
You missed the first year?
Doreen, have a little seat. Sit next to him. Sit next to him. There you are. Take the weight off.
I can't believe this.
Oh, darling, it's not true. It's not true.
Well, Doreen, you waited outside concerts trying to get an autograph.
I've never, ever met you or got an autograph. In 60 years.
What happened? What went wrong then? I can't understand that. I've met so many people.
No.
Doreen, we're going to put it right now, because you know the way you brought in the very first single.
Oh, my God, yes.
Well, Sir Cliff, a little bit earlier on, he signed that for you.
Oh, thank you.
As well as the new album, of course, Rise Up.
Oh,
Is it limited edition?
That's okay.
Thank you.
It's about time you had
There
an
you are.
autograph.
Well, I'll let you hand them over there.
After
Certainly.
all
And a
those...
hug. Oh, you
So,
do.
wait a minute, so we're talking about 59 years of... Thank you very much.
I was 12 when you came
Oh,
on
I
the
was
scene.
15.
And I've followed you ever since.
Ever
I was-
since? Oh, my
60
goodness. This is what I
years.
mean. You know, people talk about fans being staunch and stalwart and supportive.
You've got the best
Well, we'll leave you to
Yes.
chat away. So you were 12. Yesterday we were talking about when you were 11.
You know, I was a teenager and I remember watching those events unfold. It was one of the first really kind of global stories, 24-hour news. And I just remember those big themes of a cult, the FBI, a big fire. And as a 16-year-old, it felt like such an American story. But as soon as we found out that there was some British people involved in this, the more we scratched at it, the more we found out that this was actually a very British story. You know, a third of the people involved, a third of the people who died were British. And as we went from London to Nottingham to Manchester, we found more and more of those stories like Sam Henry's, that tragic story. Ordinary people, you know, religious people, but people who were nurses, teachers, students, who for one reason or another decided to give up everything to follow this man to Texas. We went out there for the podcast, and believe you me, where that commune took place is in the middle of nowhere outside the city of Waco. It really is, in the Texan prairies, you know.
And so did you get a sense about what it was about Koresh that made all of these people, like you say, come from all over the UK and follow him? What was he like?
It's like any of these cult leaders, I think, isn't it? People always talk about the kind of charismatic cult leaders, but that is it. That's where it lies. There was a lilt in his voice. There was a melody in his voice. He attracted people, but it was also the modus operandi, you know, as we saw in that as well. These preaching sessions that went on for hours and hours at a time sometimes, not necessarily in places you would expect. This was in semi-detached houses like the one we saw in the film there in Manchester. And, you know, people have said to us, this was brainwashing. I'm not an expert in the psychology of it, but it's kind of hard to argue with that.
And long-lasting as well, because you meet people that still believe that he's going to come back.
That's the thing that really shocked me as much as anything else. You know, we speak to a survivor who lives in Nottingham now. He lives in a tower block in Nottingham. He had been out there. He survived. His mother and his wife died in that fire. He served time in America, came back to the UK, but he believes that David Koresh himself, the cult leader, will return. And to think, you know, I was interviewing him for the podcast in this tower block in Nottingham, and it feels so far away from the prairies of Texas. It really does.
Fascinating stuff.
So 8 podcasts in all, and you chart it through. Do you just follow
8
them?
episodes. We follow them as individuals, you know, giving these people a real human face, and then we follow the tragedy, and we hear from every angle you could possibly imagine. It's called End of Days. On BBC Sounds.
BBC
There you
Sounds
go.
app now.
Chris,
Brilliant.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
that is all that we've got time for this evening. We should say a very big thank you to Sir Cliff Richards for joining us. New album, Rise Up, is out tomorrow, and he's back on tour next week.
And tomorrow Al Murray will be here, and we'll have Strictly head judge Shirley Ballas on the sofa. See you at 7.
Bye.
Can I borrow that jumper?